Greetings! It is I, Titus Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! I'm returning to Golarion, the Pathfinder world, and continuing the Golarion Gazetteer. I never say that right. Gazetteer. Anyway, we're going to be visiting New Thassilon today. As much as I've visited over the course of this series of videos many very interesting and older nations, I wanted to talk about one which is new. And how new is it? 5 years old. Yeah. This is a nation that if you are playing in Golarion, because remember, it's 4723 in Golarion, change out our 20 for 47, and then you have the year in Golarion, as it is, according to how the Pathfinder thing works. And this was formed basically in 4718. So, if you would be visiting this nation in your Pathfinder games, 5 years old. But it doesn't mean it doesn't have a deep and rich history, because this is a successor state to the ancient empire of Thassilon. But is also directly linked to the book we're going to talk about as the main source of this, because this source for this book is a very interesting one. It's not a normal source book. It's an adventure path. It is, in fact, not just any adventure path, but it is the final book in a 6-part adventure path, the Return of the Rune Lords one. Yeah. So, if you're interested in playing through The Rise of New Thassilon, that's the book you would take. The series you'd take. So, theoretically, it was around, actually, 2019 when the adventure concluded, because January 2019 was when Rise of New Thassilon came out, so technically 2018, 2019 it was founded. Or, sorry, 4718, 4719. My bad. So, let's talk about New Thassilon and Thassilon a little bit. But yes, if you want to learn more about it, the main source book is an adventure path, as shown here. Here is their flag. Let's talk about Thassilon just a little bit. I'll dive deeper into it maybe in its own video sometime. But also talk about New Thassilon. It is a very young nation. It's in northwest of Vastian. And it is carved out of part of what would be the Varisian region. Varisia, I'll talk about it on its own, but it's sort of a nation area, more of a region that's been settled in the Northernates. And when I talk about everything here, it came out of that territory. Now, it has 2 rulers, Sorshen and Belimarius, who I'm going to talk about, who are Rune Lords. Surviving Rune Lords from ancient Thassilon. And there are 2 territories within New Thassilon. I'll talk about that, each with their own capital, but they are generally considered part of this nation, New Thassilon. The ancient Thassilonian Empire existed in the Age of Legends. It fell, of course, during Earthfall. The apocalyptic event, which I've talked about repeatedly, destroyed their ancient empire. It was targeted at another ancient empire by effectively the Aboliths. I can't remember their term off the top of my head, but Earthfall brought about the end of them. The Aslanti Empire, the Ogulthu. The Ogulthu / Aboliths wanted to destroy the Aslanti Empire. Were going to destroy the world. From Xin, the capital of the Thassilon Empire, the Rune Lords ruled. And the Rune Lords, well, if you recall the 7 deadly sins, as they're referred to, wrath, envy, greed, sloth, lust, and lust, pride, and gluttony. Wrath, envy, greed, sloth, lust, pride, and gluttony. There's a Rune Lord for each of those. But also, each of those Rune Lords represented one of the 7 schools of magic. So, that's an interesting thing about it. So, It was a magical-based empire. I can dive into it deeper, but the history was rune magic, the rune lords dominating over this large region using their magic, enslaved giants to do cities. Earthfall struck, basically destroyed everything. The rune lords tried to find a way to survive it. That's what we can talk about. And Thassilon disappeared from history. This is not the first time the Rune Lords tried to return. The Return of the Rune Lords was one, but Rise of the Rune Lords was the first time that it kind of came about. We'll talk about that. But this is our basics of Thassilon. Magical empire ruled by 7 Rune Lords who were all immortal, but did change hands occasionally by their successor basically eliminating the one in front of them. Kill the person that's in charge of you. You're not invulnerable. You're only immortal. Eventually, Earthfall went away, disappeared, ruins all over, but now they're back. So, when we talk about this region, we have to talk about the 2 different regions that exist, and this is one of them. This is honestly the better of the 2 regions. So, New Thassilon's territory is very sparsely populated. That's the thing about it. It's most of the Kodar Mountains that are in the northern Varisian region, which is oftentimes known as the World's Roof. It's the highest of the mountain ranges in the Inner Sea region. It's kind of this northernmost territory. Very, very hostile. One of the regions is this one shown here in its modern form, Eurythinia. It stretches from its capital, Xin-Shalast, to the western coast, and the other region is, which we'll talk about in a second, is Edasseril, which is mostly Peridot Isle. So, let's talk about this region here, and we'll talk about the rest of their territory also, but let's start with Eurythinia, because we want to talk about this. Because Eurythinia was the original region it was. This modern-day version of Eurythinia, it's only one of 2. There was an ancient Eurythinia in Thassilon. And what it was is with the realm of lust and fertility. That was the original one. Lust and fertility. Because the ruler of it, Sorshen, is the rune lord of lust. Old Eurythinia was the southernmost domain of Thassilon. Fertile farms, sensual passions. It traded with foreign lands. It was known for exotic leathers. It basically dealt in sex slaves. Thassilon was not a great place, honestly. Exotic slaves were a big thing and part of them. They had very exaggerant brothels. Raiding Sahuagin were a problem for them, though they had enslaved sea giants to protect them. They had imported a lot of spices for their cuisine. This is one of the territories that had one rune lord. Sorshen ruled this region, granted by Xin, the first king, the entire time after she was in exile from Aslan. So Sorshen, who we're going to talk about in a second, maintained her capital of Xin-Euythina, which was built in the same position where Mata Corvosa now stands, and her tomb lied deep within Grand Marvasta, the pyramid which Castle Corvosa was built. But that was old Eurythinia. There's a new Eurythinia, ruled by Sorshen. So, let's talk about Queen Sorshen, shown here, because she has, in comparison to many of her other Rune Lord predecessors, taken a step away from it. Now I'm going to tell you here, she is ancient, originally Aslanti, immortal, chaotic neutral, no longer chaotic evil, which she was. She's an Atlanti human, she's 30th level. I'm just going to mention that here. If you actually stat her out, she's at 20th level Enchanter, 10th level Trickster. So, yeah. The Arcane, like, Trickster. Anyway. She was the Rune Lord of Rust, ruled that time period. And many of... all the, basically, Rune Lords had something called a Rune Well, an artifact that allowed them to use the souls of others to give them somewhat of an immortality. She created the Eye of Desire, a demi-plane where she could hide from Earthfall. Guarded by a clan of loyal vampires. And so she kind of slept into this era. When Karzog's Runewell activated in 4702, basically during Rise of the Rune Lords, she didn't stir. So that was the first sign of it. That's when Rise of the Rune Lords was, 4702. Basically, it was when the Queen of Korvosa, Iliosa Arbasti, used the Everdawn pool to bolster her power. Did that cause the awakening of Sorshen? In comparison to many of the other Rune Lords, when she returned to the world, she basically decided to take her time, see what's going on. Karzog, Kroon, Zutha emerged and were defeated. She could see that their bickering wasn't really needed, and honestly, she was kind of done with carnal pleasures and just idle cruelty. She realized the world had changed. She didn't want to be left behind, and she was inspired by the Demon Lord Noctitula's rise from the abyss and becoming a deity, that she concluded that the old way of tyrannical rule wouldn't work anymore. She released the Cabal of Vampires from her service, and when she learned that Aslantis was meddling with time, she basically helped a bunch of adventurers oppose that, and now she basically seeks to rule New Thassilon peacefully without having to work on war. So, she effectively was smart enough in comparison to many of the other Rune Lords that when she woke up, she was like, let's take a minute and see what's going on here. And then she's like, you know what? I can't do the old things anymore. Let's just keep at it. So as she is now in the modern version of Eurythinia, she basically, Queen Sorshen, doesn't really involve herself with her subject's life. And she seeks Eurythinia to be a place of exiles, subservient artists, misfits can call home. And it's, again, not in the same region of the ancient namesake, but it's in a new port of it. Nowadays, there is, of course, so that's the, where is that? So, she rules from, and I will show a picture here. This is the ancient version of it, Xin-Shalast. So Xin-Shalast, this is the ancient version of it, so this city is no more, is the capital of Eurythinia. It's technically not considered the capital of New Thassilon. No, it is. Xin-Shalast is the capital of New Thassilon. Sorry. I have to get my words sake. It was once Shalast, the Thassilonian realm of greed, the capital of that. So it was under Rune Lord Karzog, this area here, and, you know, Karzog's return caused his death. Adventurers killed him in Rise of the Rune Lord, defeated him in his thing. So now that, you know, Sorshen has awakened and, you know, she took over this area, but she kept the old name not out of a respect for Karzog, but to remind herself of Karzog's errors. Because remember, Karzog woke first of all the Rune Lords. Karzog also was killed. You know, his greed, his power, what he wanted didn't come about. So it's important to see she remembers that. And the city itself is a pretty large city. At its height, there's a large population now. There still is things like giants, humans, of course, a lot of members. It was a metropolis back in the day. Storm giants, stone giants, taiga giants, frost giants, cloud giants find themselves there. Some dragons originally lived in the areas. Rune giants were in there when they served. Lamaroses. There weren't a lot of normal humanoids that were there overall, but in the recent years, with its being now taken over by a different Loon Lord, you know, colonists from a lot of Varisian cities have come in here. Jaggerhoof, Riddleport, Magnamar. It's a city that's changed a lot, though there is still this population that originally was there. It's becoming a new nation now. Revigorated, basically. And it's located on Mare Mastiff in the Kodar Mountains, a very high altitude. It was originally close. It was near the. It was connected to Leng, and kind of a demi-plane of nightmares within the Dreamlands, and that helped prevent people from reaching it. It's a little more open now, of course. Xin-Shalast is the capital of that region. Now, let's talk about the other region, which I mentioned about, and this is the ruler of that region, of course, of Edasseril, which is on Peridot Isle. Edasseril, of course, is the realm of envy, originally. This is a region on New Thassilon that's been named for it, because there is still one other Rune Lord that still exists. The original Edasseril was a realm of resources, timber, gemstones, irons, animal resources, and it was ruled by the Rune Lord Belimarius, who maintained her capital in Xin-Euythina. The rising oceans destroyed it. Now it's a region, the new Edasseril, in New Thassilon. Peridot Island is the deserted southern half of the Ironbound archipelago. Also has the mierani forest, which I'll talk about those two in a minute. Belimarius still continues to rule over it. She's still poisoned by the sting of MB. She's, despite mercy and understanding from those that could have destroyed her. So it's an unfortunate thing that she still is affected by her problems, you know. Now, she was also a human of Aslant design, descent. Yeah. A 18th level abjurer, because envy is abjuration. Lust was enchantment, if you didn't realize. Again, as I said, each of the sins was particular magic. Belimarius is also one of the 3 spellcasters to have first created undead shadows, believed to be. As an important note about this lady, who's now in charge of, you know, a part of New Thassilon, she created the Eye of Jealousy to avoid Earthfall. It imploded, trapping Xin-Euythina with Belimarius and made Trustridus spear outside of time, encased in the crystal sphere called a crystallium, where they live in the final week before Earthfall again and again, never remembering anything. When the Aslantist used Scepter of Ages to trap foes in there, it broke the time loop. basically, situation was known by the residents of the city. Belimarius' control wavered, and nowadays we have this situation where they're here. It's an unfortunate thing that there's the city breaking out of the crystal sphere. It was the capital of the realm of Emby. It's now capital of this small kingdom in a nation, basically. It's a kind of sad place, because Belimarius is still very much so an old school rune lord in a way, and still overlords the city. And it's just unfortunate that Sorshen is basically giving her a lot. You know, Sorshen has basically allied herself with Noctitula, as I said, was inspired by her, and has become a patron of her. Basically, she wants New Thassilon to be a place that, you know, is much different than its ancient ways, but respects some of the work of ancient Thassilon. Basically, it's sort of like she wants the New Thassilon to be a place where we still work on the kind of inspiration, the magic, the art of old Thassilon, but we're inspired by a new world. She saw the deaths of so many of the other rune lords who, when they came into the modern world, wanted to be rune lords. And that's why she wants peace. Belimarius has been spared up till now, but she sees other nations jealously and is kind of unstable. And Sorshen knows that Belimarius might threaten New Thassilon's peace, might have to be dealt with, but Sorshen kind of wants Belimarius to have a chance to redeem herself like she did, honestly, to have her own fate. And she doesn't voice her dissent against Belimarius yet. She wants, because they're the last two rune lords, I guess it's a respect out of that. You know, they ruled Thassilon together, and finding a new way is something that they both want, in a way. Aristotle still does have a little bit of territory to it, as I said. More with, you know, the region there. They're showing off a little bit of Marian Forest. The Ironbound archipelago being a little longer. It's a network of islands in the steaming sea off the north coast of Avastia. It's an island chain over 300 miles long. There are 13 major islands in that area. The northernmost areas is claimed by the Linarm Kings, of course. As, you know, when Linarm Kings die or don't, they kind of change around. And Mordant Spire is here, the Isle of the Elves, which I've talked about in my elf video. So that's another one to mention out in the Ironbound archipelago. But then mierani Forest, of course, is in the territory there. And there's some elves there. Belimarius moved to annex this. But the elves have been opposing this entire annex. So it's basically Edasseril is that section of it is trying to expand the rounds of New Thassilon, but being kind of kept in check. So, we will talk about the brief history of how this came about. And this lady here is the fault of all of this. Yes. This is one of the Rune Lords. Say hello to Alaznist. Yes, the Rune Lord of Wrath, an invoker. It was all her fault. Basically, if you want to dive deep into it, the Return of Rune Lord's adventure path was caused by her. She tried to employ the Scepter of Ages to travel back in time, replace Golarion history with one that she rules over a new Thassilon stretching over the land of the Lindwar Kings to Ustalov and Middle Beyond. Adventurers that worked with Sorshen basically defeated her. Again, of the 7 Rune Lords, Garst had died earlier, and her and 3 others got killed as a result of this, leaving 2. So this was the founding of New Thassilon. She tried to use time travel to create it. The result was failure, but because she brought about the return of a number of ancient Thassilonian places, well, yeah, it created a spot where this returned Rune Lord and the other one basically were like, well, we have cities, we're here, cool, welcome. So, blame her for this existing. Again, if you ever want to check it out, the Return of the Rune Lords is one of the adventure paths to check out as related to that. As I've said, it's a good adventure path. Now, we can't talk about this and talk about this nation without talking about this really nice lady here who is the patron of course, Eurythinia and New Thassilon, the major religion of it. Noctitula. Who is this lady? Well, she is the Redeemer Queen, goddess of artists, midnight and exiles, and has been officially a goddess for like, I think a few more years than this. If you want to see her rise to godhood, you would have to check out the adventure path where it happened in Wrath of the Righteous. The very book that, if you check out, I had done previously on this channel, a series on my Twitch channel, I should say. I did a playthrough of the video game version of it. But in the actual adventure path, this nice demon lord lady became a goddess. So yes, she was a succubus in the abyss, became the demon lord of assassination and ruler of succubi, discovered she had the power to murder other demon lords, something that many of them did not have. She did it into self-defense over another one. So she seduced and killed a number of rivals, basically keeping a lot of demon lords in check. But her power also grew. This, the game-ending lore does not match the actual adventure path lore, I will tell you, for the question there. I would look into the adventure path version of it, which is, again, she helped a group of adventurers defeat Descarai and close the World Wound. That's basically it. The video game version of it, a lot of a different story. Very different story, has very similarities. There is the idea of defeating Descarai, closing the World Wound. She particular was involved with helping out the things here. Basically, as she killed demon lords, she was convicted to turn against her demonic nature. She wanted to abandon evil altogether. And helping with the adventurers, helping defeat Descarai, closing the World Wound, she disappeared from the abyss and became a full-fledged goddess. She is chaotic neutral goddess. May I note, she didn't go chaotic good. She became chaotic neutral. She got rid of her evil. But, you know, she now is in Elysium, in a place called the Midnight Palette. She's known as the Redeemer Queen. Artist exiles, Midnight are her kind of areas of concern. And again, that's another thing is, New Thassilon, and especially the area under Sorshen, is becoming a place of exiles and artists. You know, Noctitula's redemption inspired a Rune Lord. And honestly, the Rune Lord is an immortal that has like 30 levels, so, you know, is pretty close to demigod status. So being in a kind of friendly relationship with a new goddess is honestly probably good for both of them. Which is anything to say. An important thing to say is, though she's chaotic neutral, she does not grant powers to anybody that's chaotic evil. That's an important part about it. Normally, most deities give powers to people of an alignment that is at least one step away from them. Technically speaking, cleric alignments in D&D 1e were chaotic neutral, chaotic good. In this one, neutral, chaotic good work for in 2nd edition. So, her basically relationship also... she also has developed a relationship with the elven goddess Fiddle-Andra Findelara. I cannot pronounce these things. So that's as a goddess. And she was worshipped as Demon Lord, but now as the Redeemer Queen has different connections. And honestly, you know, still, you know, some of her followers that didn't follow... Plenty of her followers followed her to redemption. Some of them didn't and turned to other Demon Lords, though. She does have a Redeemer cult that is particularly helpful in New Thassilon that believes in, like, redemption as part of their entire thing. Redemption for the dark things. So she also finds herself in Rest and Frisia and Nidal. So, again, as much as, like, I don't want to dive too deep into here for her, also, this is a deity, her advent and her existence is this important part of New Thassilon, as it is the major religion of New Thassilon, and is a new religion. These are new things that makes it a very interesting and awakened country. And this comes down to another big part of New Thassilon. It's a place that is combining the new thoughts of modern Golarion with a lot of ancient Thassilonian stuff. Because you have to remember, and I'm showing off a rune giant here, because there are still rune giants in the territory. They were a major part of, you guessed it, Thassilon and the Rune Lords. They were the main servile force of them. So, Edasseril is the more aggressive of the New Thassilon's 2 kingdoms in conflict, the Elves of Murray Forest, the Linorm kings of the Ironbound Islands. She actually Belimarius did a first act of overthrowing the highly unpopular Linor king, Opar Eight Fingers, in Southmar. She earned the gratitude of those people because they hated her. She's recruited denizens of many islands, giant Zoogloths. There's some highly contested territories. On the other hand, in Eurythinia, her area has just had a lot of development. Brine Wall is a thriving port there. Brine Wall being one of the smaller cities there. I probably should have talked about that one. Which has been around for some time. It's now part of New Thassilon. Basically, it was annexed with the rest of the No Lands, which is the territory that it was in. It was an abandoned settlement and castle that was part of the Chelish expansion of Varisia, and basically is now resettled. And it basically connects up with the Church of Noctitula is very important with the politics there, and holds a big power as the state religion, of course. And now, arcane spellcasters are a big thing in New Thassilon, because there are new magic traditions, blending old Thassilonian magics, which you have a Rune Lord bringing back. Remember, Thassilon was destroyed by Earthfall. And now we have one of the people that was helping develop all this magic helping bring it back to the world, rather than we pick through ruins to try to learn it. Combining with the new techniques of the world. Granted, there are those that are also trying to claim Rune Lord titles of their own, making it up. Modern Rune Lords that are trying to mimic them. This is a problem. Some pledge their service to Belimarius. Others are just trying to pretend it. One of the major players is a person named Atheus who claims to be a reincarnation of the two rune lords of the same name. These modern rune lords, which have become part of it, which is a faction within there, which is still technically allowed, but probably not a great faction to have, sees ancient Thassilon's wisdom in war, but understand their evil ways led to their defeat, so they're looking for magical potential. So yes, some of them kind of want to emulate the evil ways of the ancient rune lords, but they also understand a lot of that led to defeat, so they're walking a fine line. These new rune lords, as they call themselves, who are the people that are the forefronts of this magic tradition, blending new and old. But not all spellcasters are like this. It's just there's a fraction of them that have become called that. An important faction within it. So there's a lot of beings and creatures within the territory there. So yeah, that's New Thassilon there. An interesting, honest, new nation that is in the Golarion world, 5 years old. It marks that if you would go there, certainly it's a new nation, but it's a nation that's both ancient and new. Think about that. Two of its cities, the two capitals of its two kingdoms, are built upon ancient ones. And yes, certainly Sorshen is recognized as more the ruler of the entire territory, but she does split the territory with Belimarius, and they, similar to what the Rune Lords did in the ancient days, each had their own kingdom under a major nation. You know, Thassilon had originally a king who gave the Rune Lords power and then passed on, and there's more to that story there, but, you know, Xin was a major player, the original founder of Thassilon. And it marks down there's still this history of the multiple kingdoms under one nation that Thassilon has. And as much as this nation is small, it's in a very difficult area, it's a very dangerous area, it's powerful. Rune Lords are powerful. And the thing is, Rune Lords that were defeated were mainly defeated because, one, help from another Rune Lord, and two, weren't at their full power when awakening. That's one of those things. We've had two Rune Lords have had time to cement their power. Granted, one is fairly benevolent and basically has taken a step back. That's good. But if someone pisses off Sorshen, she's got 30 levels of nuke you to deal with you. Don't piss off a powerful immortal. And even Belimarius is still a pretty high-level character. Not to be messed with. With immortality, enhancements from Thassilonian magic. They're very powerful individuals. They're players in the game of Avastia that are very influential just because of their existence. And yes, they have not caused issues in the world, which is a reason that they've been accepted in this new founding nation. They've found themselves relatively peaceful in this world. And the region that New Thassilon is in is a very honestly savage region with a lot of internal wars. The land of the Wind-Armed Kings, Wind-Armed Kings are always fighting amongst each other, claiming out territories, things like that. The area that they're in was a very rugged, non-settled region in northern Varizia. They've managed to exist there. New Thassilon is a incredibly interesting area to hear about, and certainly I hope to see more adventures, more information based on them. But again, Rise of Rune Lords, the book that called Rise of New Thassilon, is the best place to check out the basic information on it. But I hope we see more. I'm going to be honest, I really do. It's a very interesting place. I'd love to maybe someday down the line have an update video on New Thassilon with new interesting lore that they add into it, new in-depth stuff, new adventures that explore new ways the territory has evolved. But anyway, that's it for today's discussion. I hope you enjoy. You remember, I have tabletop discussions live on my Twitch channel every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Tuesday, Thursday afternoon. Saturday, late morning. Early afternoon for those. I put these up on YouTube if you're watching it there. Most of the time you people are. Usually a couple days later. Follow Twitch. Subscribe, comment, like, ring the bell on YouTube. Those are the best ways to support me. I have other content both on Twitch and YouTube. Make sure to check all those out. All my tabletop content really just goes up on YouTube. Discussing tabletop, all those kind of things. I really recommend them all. Great ways to support me. And those are all the free ways to support me. If you want to find other ways to support me, I'm definitely up for it. I've got Patreon subscriptions and stuff like that. A lot of great ways. Anyway, I think that's enough for today. I hope you learned a lot and enjoyed learning about a very cool new place that hopefully we'll see more of. I honestly do hope we will. So anyway, I will be back for more tabletop, for more stuff. But until those times, I bid all of you out there a wonderful farewell.